My kids and I were having breakfast the other day, and we're listening to NPR. We always listen to NPR because we're better than you. And so we're listening to NPR at breakfast the other morning, and there's this one story where they kept using this phrase. They kept saying 9/11 deniers. They kept saying that. 9/11 deniers. And my daughter was like, what is that? And I said, well, it's a group of people that think September 11th was a conspiracy. And she said, oh.
To satisfy my own curiosity. Then, with the help of my son Brendan and some of the men from Squad 288, we picked up my son and we carried him up the hill. We placed him in an ambulance, and my son Brendan and I rode with him to the morgue. We were able to bring home our son in one piece, and we put him to bed at home where he belonged. We have a chart here, if I could just show it for a second. The work that continued at the site went on for almost 9 months. The New York City Fire Department used the GPS system to mark every remain that was found. This map, you can see the vast majority of remains. Those are the towers. Those towers sit within the slurry wall area. That area goes down 6 stories deep. Every dot there represents a body part. It cannot represent all of them because we went from grade level down to 6 stories below. So one dot may represent 5, 10, 15, 20 body parts. Thank you. I will leave that with you also. We meet with I belong to the Coalition of 9/11 Families. We meet with the medical examiner's office every 3 weeks. I'll give you just a couple of quick figures here. Between Shanksville, of course, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon, we know that some 3,000 lives were taken that day. At the World Trade Center site, 2,792 souls were murdered that day. 19,934 body parts were retrieved in 9 months. To date, 6,438 of those remains have been identified. To date, 13,447 of those remains still are unidentified and remain at the medical examiner's office. 1,477 families have been notified that their loved ones were found. 1,312 have not. Out of 2,792 souls lost at the World Trade Center, there were only 292 whole bodies. There will never be any more than 292 whole bodies. My son was one of those whole bodies.
But today, over 1,100 victims are still missing. Lost without a trace.
By now, I expected to get some kind of remains, but you just kind of have to accept that you don't have any.
I don't have any physical remains at all. No grave to go to.
As the
That's when the South Tower cracked. It started to rain down on us, hitting my head, and then just knocked me into the building and fell onto my legs and crushed my foot, knocked me out of my shoes.
Forensics expert recalls September 11. I just saw the top of it explode, he said. My first reaction was that it was a time-release bomb. I must have looked up too long, because everyone around me was running. He felt small pieces of concrete strike his body and was hurled through a window, which probably saved his life. The force knocked him out of his shoes. If I landed outside, I would have been killed, he said. WHE, and I opened my eyes. It was pitch black. That's what scared me.
Which was about 5 seconds long, preceding the actual collapse, and then a boom when each of those towers collapsed. And then one person described it as a strange sucking noise as the buildings did implode after that. Now,
suddenly I heard.
people about the sounds, sights and sounds that I heard on that day. The thing that got me suspicious was when I saw the replay of everything the next week and the week after, they took the explosions out. That's how I knew something was up. And the detonations that took both buildings down were exactly identical. First, it started off with about, I'm just guessing, 6 or 7 seconds of this very low frequency rumble, and then the detonation started, and they went boom, boom. They were a little less than a second. Tower number 1, the second tower collapsed. It was the exact same series of detonations, to the T, the exact same series of detonations. And I just stood there, I didn't move. And I got to feel and hear the whole thing. And I can tell you that the air pressure changed. It was like all of a sudden being like in a submarine 300 feet below the surface.
At one point, we had an explosion that came by that was pretty close, and it shook the stairway.
It is obvious that only explosives can create this kind of waves. When you hit a solid, the frequency is above 10 Hertz. And here, the frequency which was recorded is under 0.5, 0.6, 0.5 Hertz. And only explosives or earthquakes can create this kind of wave frequencies. Explosions. They record only what I said, subaerial and subterranean explosions. And we can see that the Tower 1 was collapsed by subterranean, an important subterranean explosion, but the Tower 2 and the Tower 7 was collapsed only by explosion at the surface, the round surface.
Suddenly I hear
There was one network that gave the 9/11 responder story the full 22 minutes of intense coverage that it deserved. But that network, unfortunately, was Al Jazeera. Our networks were scooped with a sympathetic Zadrogabil story by the same network that Osama bin Laden sends his mixtapes to.